Your child was born into what Gira Island called a concentration camp. Your child was left to languish in that concentration camp.
It sounds like you're working up a justification.
True. Thank you.
I do need to bring her in.
Oh, don't you know? The explanation is not justification. Okay. Clearly, they have no agency, and this is just the inevitable result of these concentration camp positions. But clearly, Israel has 100% agency, and we never give them an excuse for like bombing Gaza after Gaza has launched rockets into their territory for 20 years.
Now, do we not have the right to defend ourselves from destruction? We didn't start 67. We didn't start 73. We didn't start.
Kill me.
We go and we say we crumble onto hope. We hold onto hope. We say let's do the Oslo Accords. We offered Arafat, and Clinton will say this himself.
Also, I like how he points out 67, but to be clear, Finkelstein thinks they started all the war. Is he like?
This is not even indiscriminate killing. This is very discriminate killing.
The relative risk usually is like a measure of it's a measure of how discriminate your army is being towards civilians versus towards militants. Usually if it's a genocide, the relative risk is under 4, which basically means that if you're a militant, you're only like 4 times as more likely to die than a civilian. And Gaza's like 35. If you want to see more content like this, I would really appreciate you liking and subscribing. It really helps with the algorithm. And make sure to check out the Discord and other social links in the description. Okay, haven't done Israel-Palestine stuff in a bit. Okay, I gotta warm up my talking points. Okay. We'll see. Although Norman Finkelstein's insane, so I can just reject all of his opinions, like a priori, you know.
Israel's war on Hezbollah is over for now. The ceasefire ends almost 14 months of fighting and 2 months of a direct and deadly assault by Israel inside Lebanon. President Biden and the US administration pushed to get the deal done before Thanksgiving, and no doubt this is the first good news from the Middle East in a long time. But 170 miles to the south, there's very little to feel grateful about. Israel's war on Hamas continues unabated, and the IDF's conduct is facing intensifying scrutiny. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and sacked Defense Minister Yoav Gallant face ICC arrest warrants for war crimes. Reports by the New York Times and others accuse the IDF of habitually using captured Gazans as human shields. President Trump has assembled a stridently pro-Israel cabinet with little patience for his critics. Many supporters of the...
Did they ever... Wait, what happened to those Palestinian... or the IDF people who raped that one Palestinian? Didn't... Israel said they were investigating them, right? And then there were like riots over it, because apparently people in Israel are like actually fucking unhinged. Whatever happened to them? Did they actually get arrested?
Palestinian calls fear that
and charged.
Holds social calls for optimism, and that the very concept of a two-state solution may now be dead. To debate this, I'm joined in the studio by 2 of the strongest voices on this conflict, both with very opposite positions. Fleur Hassan is the Israel Special Envoy for Trade and Innovation, as well as a former Deputy Mayor of Jerusalem. Nonfon Finkelstein is a political scientist and pro-Palestine activist. Also,
there was like, because I remember, yeah, they were like charged or whatever, and then like fucking people in Israel's cabinet. These are like people protesting it. People in Israel cabinets were like, yeah, it's fine. Everything's legitimate. We can do it. Whatever. Were they actually charged? Were they actually? I don't know. Because there's a difference between like, you know, troops committing war crimes and actually like having war crimes embedded in your fucking like military like structure and everything. Hamas like intentionally commits war crimes. Israel may have individual troops commit war crime, but as a matter of policy, typically they don't commit war crimes, is my understanding, unless you're Norman Finkelstein, who I'm sure is about to explain why that's not true.
Gaza's Gravediggers, an inquiry into corruption in high places. Well, welcome to both of you. I've never met either of you. I've interviewed you both several times, but it's great to meet you both in person, and I appreciate you prepared to do this. A lot of people in this war period have not wanted to debate with people, especially on the other side, so I appreciate that. Norman, you've got a new book out, and I'll come to that in more detail as we go on. But just talking about where we are right now, we've got this ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah. There is no ceasefire yet with Hamas. But where do you think this war now is?
Well, with all due respect, I have to disagree with your characterization of where it began and where it now is.
Oh, great start.
In my opinion, speaking on the basis of what Israeli leaders themselves said after October 7th, this isn't a war against Hamas. This is a war against Gaza. In fact, it's not a war at all. It's a genocide. And in the course of that genocide, we could say, as of now, the best estimates are there are about 42 million tons of rubble in Gaza. It would take about 10 to 15 years to clear out the rubble.
I have no confidence that these figures are accurate at all. Like there's that whole controversy over like before people have been quoting like, oh, 70% of Gaza is destroyed or whatever, and they're using like satellite data that's there's satellite and radar data from like private companies or whatever that aren't as accurate as the UN satellite numbers, and they're using like whatever new methodology. I have a Notion page on it. whatever new methodology that like hasn't been tested before. And if you actually look at like the UN satellite data, which are much higher quality and are like under manual review and not just using like an algorithm, it was a much lower number. But I have no clue. It's impossible for me to know what he's citing. But since it's normal Finkelstein, I'm assuming he's citing the dumb numbers. There we go.
Even if the rubble were cleared out, there are no prospects for rebuilding Gaza because Israel will claim that any cement that enters Gaza will be used to build tunnels, and so they'll bar cement as they do.
Wow, that's crazy. I wonder, is there any truth to that, Finkelstein? Are there Hamas tunnels, or do we just deny those exist? Do we deny that Hamas does hire people to build tunnels with the dual use materials? Like, that's actually, a big reason, why it's probably better Hamas just be removed from power entirely, because like any ceasefire that leaves Hamas in power, well, like how the fuck are you going to rebuild Gaza if you still have Hamas in power and you don't trust them to actually use any equipment responsibly? So like, shouldn't you probably try to get rid of Hamas entirely then? Like, or at least remove them from as much power in the Gaza Strip as you can. Like,
did after Operation Cast Lead in 2008-9.
Like, you can be, this is the evil argument. This is the evil argument that she's going to make, okay? The other panelist is going to make, and I might even, I somewhat agree with it. I don't know where I land on it. Like, clearly, the West Bank being occupied probably makes Israel feel safer, giving, part of it is also the PA agrees to cooperate in security matters, but like having the West Bank be occupied, being able to establish like security checkpoints and stuff probably does make Israel feel safer, allowing the Palestinian Authority to have these dual-use materials that could in theory be used to create weapons or create tunnels or whatever. You can make that same argument for Gaza. Like, maybe, like, clearly the conditions of people in the West Bank are so much better than in Gaza, and clearly just having an occupation doesn't preclude the ability of like life being absolutely horrible. It's like maybe it's just let Israel occupy Gaza so they can actually have like supervision over how materials are being used in the Gaza Strip. There's an argument you can make for that.
Where we are now, I would say Gaza is no more. Gaza has been pulverized, it's been obliterated, and that was the Israeli goal from October 7th. As you recall for sure, the statements that immediately came out after October 7th spoke about Amalek, spoke about there not being any civilians in Gaza. The intention was to once and for all liquidate, solve the Gaza question. And in my opinion, they have succeeded in that regard. And the prospects for the people of Gaza, my guess is, and it's pure speculation here, by hook or by crook, they're going to find a way to leave because there is nothing that remains. The estimate is about 60 to 70% of Gaza's infrastructure has been destroyed. The hospitals were targeted, the universities were targeted.
I think he could be using the UN numbers now because like when I looked at this stuff, it was like a few months ago by now. But like, I think the number like 60% of residential homes have been destroyed is accurate. Although it's hard to, like, residential homes can be lawful military targets. There are reasons to target residential homes, like if they have a military purpose or use because Hamas is operating out of them, or even if they militarily, their location makes it such that they are a lawful military target. Like, let's say in a hypothetical that you would need to destroy a home in order to move a tank past it. That would make it a lawful military target. So arguably even like the homes Israel blows up because it's trying to build a extended buffer zone are like lawful military things. I think clearly Israel has a legitimate interest in trying to build a buffer zone with Gaza after the October 7th attacks. So like even the residential homes there that they blow up, even if they're not used by Hamas, could be lawful military targets. That's how international law works, at least.
Obviously, homes were targeted. So there is nothing left. And that was the intention. The Gaza Hamas aspect was pretty much a side
Coach
show.
Larry here. Welcome to the stream, Coach Larry.
When you look at the statistics from the Israeli government, less than one Israeli soldier has been killed each day in Gaza.
Okay, but
that's not a war.
When you say it's a sideshow, I'm going to come to Fleur for a
I mean, like, this is how many U.S. soldiers died in Afghanistan? It had to be less than one day in total, right? Didn't we lose like 2,000 soldiers to Afghanistan in like 20 years while we were there? Like, for like a Western country, this is like fighting an insurgent group. This is relatively common, right? Are we debating about your title? We were earlier. We're watching this right now. I'm sure we'll get back to a little bit of it later on. But
response to that, say it's not a sideshow. you imply that Israel were going to do this anyway, but they hadn't done this. And everything that they have done, they would say, was a direct response to what was a monstrous act of terrorism. I mean, 1,200 people were killed, nearly 7,000 people were wounded. It's one of the worst attacks of modern times. You know, and as you know, we've debated this many times, but I have always supported Israel's right to defend itself. In fact, I've always believed they had a duty to, given the scale of what happened with 3,000 people coming over a border and just murdering anyone to get their hands on. It's, to me, always been a case of what is a proportionate response, what is acceptable. I personally feel it has gone way too far. And for the reasons that you state, and I'll come to you, Fleur, is that there's nothing left there now. I don't know what people expect to happen. Fleur,
oh, damn, she's got an actual notepad. Damn.
So you can get into the rest of what Norman said. But Gaza's just been flattened. I mean, it is, I know people who've been there who just say it is an utter devastation. What happens after this war?
I mean, I need to fucking, I haven't looked into it since for like a few months or whatever. I need to read the proportionality ad bellum shit. Proportionality typically has to do with like a specific military attack, whether the direct and concrete military gains outweigh the expected damage to civilian and civilian objects. It's not typically applied to like a whole war. Like just because you kill like 40,000 people in response to Hamas killing 800 civilians a year doesn't mean that war is disproportionate or whatever. Like you would look at it like an individual level, like did this individual attack kill too many civilians and harm too many civilian objects in relation to the number of militants it killed and, you know, military infrastructure it got rid of. Another low moment for Biden. I just don't care that much about it. It's like I'm not going to apologize for it when Trump pardoned way worse people. So
I mean, assuming that it ends sooner rather than later, we've seen Israel now end the war with Hezbollah, certainly for the next 60 days. But what happens? Gaza's done, isn't it? But what happens to these people?
Well, I know. I actually think they have an incredible opportunity because in 2005, when Israel left Gaza, in order to give the Palestinian leadership a chance to create maybe the pilot of a Palestinian state.
Singapore, say it. Singapore, the Mediterranean.
They could have turned it into Dubai or Singapore, but instead.
There we go. We got it. The talking point. They all say it. I hate these pants. God damn it.
When Hamas got in a brutal coup in 2006, what happened is they turned Gaza essentially into a military base. They filled it out with tunnels, 800 kilometers of tunnels. They built under hospitals. They built those tunnels. They built booby traps. They didn't build tunnels under hospitals. They built hospitals on top of tunnels. There's like 30 hospitals in Gaza.
Actually, I don't know if that one is true. I don't know which came first, the tunnels to hospitals, but
in the whole of Israel, there's like 12.
That's 20 years ago, all right?
Well, no, they've spent 20 years turning the whole of Gaza into one booby trap for this Armageddon moment.
But that's not an answer to my question.
The answer is what happens now?
Wait, what happens to 1.9 million people who've been sent to refugee?
If you don't care, why have it in your title? Because we were talking about it earlier. We spent like the first full hour of the stream talking about it. Like, also, both can be wrong, but like, if one is 1/100th as bad as the other one, then I'm not going to sit here and apologize for it when people on the right take no accountability for what their guy did. And I want to debate about it when it's brought up, because I'm going over this right now. So like, I'm sure we would like talk about it after this. But like, I usually divide the stream into segments when like I upload it to YouTube, so it makes more sense to only be talking about one thing at a time and not go on tangents like this. So
that's now been attacked as well. What happens to these people? A lot of their homes are just gone.
To be clear, the refugee camps, there are safe spaces where Hamas also infiltrate, and that's
True, they do operate out of them. Accurate.
It has been reported, and they put their people in.
Where is their safe?
What happens now?
Okay,
you ask me where the light is.
Yeah, on that one point you just said though, where are they supposed to go to be safe? Right now, where do Gazans go?
Mr. Finkelstein.
It's safe zones require two sides to set up. I mean, first of all, she might mention this. There is the humanitarian area. Now, Israel does still strike inside that humanitarian area occasionally because Hamas operates out of the humanitarian area. Safe zones require two sides to set up. Hamas won't agree to a safe zone because they operate out of every safe zone that is set up. Like, they operate from hospitals, they operate out of refugee camps, like...
Said that we're engaged in a genocide. If we were, why are we asking people to get out of the way?
Let me ask you again.
Why are we giving warning? Why are we damaging our own element of security? Why are we doing that?
Voice cracking? I ain't own, dude.
Where should the Gazan civilians go to be safe?
The Gazan civilians today have an opportunity after Hamas
that has
subjugated them to rebuild their society.
That wasn't my question. My question is, where can they currently go to be safe?
To the safe spaces that Israel has assigned, where Israel is not attacking.
Where?
Well, it depends where.
It's misleading to say safe spaces. There are safer spaces. There's no actual dedicated safe zone, but Israel does have like the map, the evacuations map. They tell people to evacuate certain areas where they're going to be launching attacks or whatever, and they tell them to go to other areas which they don't plan on striking, at least not in that exact moment. But again, there is no people. A lot of times people say like, oh, Israel told them to go to the south, and Hunter Biden, pardon me, I signed up to simply Sign up to simply say what you should stop doing. It's cringe. Do you support funding Ukraine? Absolutely. Yes. Want to debate about the pardon? The title is all... Bro, it's a relevant thing that happened in the news, so I titled it that, and we talked about it for like 2 hours, and we're going over a different thing. That's not that insane. Crazy. What? Wild. What was I saying? Oh, people will say like, oh, you know, Israel told people to go south, but then they bombed in the south. Just because you tell people to evacuate one area doesn't automatically make every other area like a safe zone that you can't ever bomb. You know, again, a safe zone takes two sides to set up, and Hamas has a history of operating, like we know they operate out of schools and refugee camps. So like, update title then? I just don't pay much attention to. I don't know why you're so triggered by this. Like, I just...
They moved them from Rafah. They said it couldn't be done. You can't move 1 million people. We did with absolutely almost 0 casualties. And so it can be done. You can move a population out of the way. Hamas is actively putting them in the...
I don't know what she means by absolutely almost 0 casualties. There might not have been many casualties fighting. There might not have actually been many casualties in the evacuation itself, but I'm sure a lot of people did die when they bombed Rafah or whatever. It doesn't necessarily mean it's automatically bad or disproportionate. But like typically... It's very hard to get more than like 85 to 90% of people out of whatever area you choose to evacuate. Usually like 15% of people choose to stay, and that's very common in war.
Way. That is what nobody talks about.
The other argument,
war crime
but the other
of Hamas.
Yes, but the other argument is that Israel is indiscriminately attacking everywhere and then saying, you know what, Hamas are there. And because no journalists are allowed in to verify this, because the
oh my God,
there is no independent way of verifying whether any of that is true.
If we were indiscriminately attacking, why are we asking people to get out of the way? Why are we creating safe zones?
Man.
All of what he's saying, you have to
to
understand where normal Finkelstein is in his head, okay? First of all, he doesn't believe in the existence of the state of Israel. So it's very difficult. He doesn't believe it should exist at all. Secondly, as a Jew, he's got what I, as a Jew, let me finish my...
Lost a potential follower. Damn, just because I had the title. I didn't choose the title in time. Like, what the... Like, okay, damn. Fuck.
As a Jew,
Rats.
As a Jew, you know, Norman Finkelstein has got what I describe as the abused wife syndrome. The abused wife that stays with her abusive husband has to justify her staying in 3 ways. One is saying, it's not all that bad, which is what he says about anti-Semitism. The second is saying, well, they didn't mean it. Anti-Semitism, they didn't really mean to target Jews. And the third way, which is he's actively engaging, is to saying, it's our fault. It's my fault. The wife that says, I would have provoked him. I provoked him.
Before I come to
okay.
You've made your point and he will respond.
And he is in. Okay. The Israeli Jew is the liberated Jew.
Okay.
That has left
he looks so done. Thank you, Momo Jeans, for the follow. I appreciate it.
The point that you were going to
welcome to the stream. What's up?
What happens at the end of this war?
You want to know what I think should happen?
No, what is going to happen?
Well, I believe.
What's the plan?
Norman Finkelstein is a Zionist. True.
And with a Saudi deal.
Welcome to the stream, by the way.
And this is one of the reasons that they started the massacre on October 7th to begin with. They understood where the Iranians understood where this was all going. They deployed Hamas and they said, this is the moment now.
My pussy hurts. Nice one.
There's a real opportunity for the Gazans, for the good Gazans who want a decent life for themselves and not living a life of terrorism, to rebuild.
How?
Under the maybe civil administration of their own local leaders.
Where do they go and live when all their homes have been destroyed?
With their own local leaders, with Saudis.
She literally said rebuild, brother.
Quickly, who have the resources to build quickly. If we really have a
Can I do TTS for free? I don't want to know. The TTS thing is a donate thing.
Like the Abraham Accord countries, they can get together and rebuild. There is an opportunity.
Still under Israel control?
I don't think Israel should be controlling them.
So Israel would back off completely?
We have to retain security control so we don't have another
so you would have control. Okay.
But not administrative
control.
But eventually we don't have to have it.
You know, eventually it'd be really nice actually if Israel had no control.
Why did we leave in 2005?
Let me bring
why did we leave in 2005?
I'll come back to you. Norman, your chance to respond.
Okay. Number one, totally trivial point. If I need psychoanalysis, I wouldn't go to a representative of a lunatic state. I would go to a rational person. Number two, Israel never left Gaza. That's not my opinion. In 2005, Israel...
quote the UN. Thank you. Yes.
Inside Gaza to the periphery of Gaza.
Are you Zionist? It depends how you define it. I mean, I believe Israel has a right to exist. Sure, if you want to. Are you Jewish? I'm not Jewish, no.
Who goes out of Gaza? Who goes into Gaza? Who goes out of Gaza?
Yep, the blockade. I wonder why they have the blockade.
Is controlled by Israel.
I wonder if it's because, during like the Second Intifada, they were getting weapons, like they were fucking scuba diving to get weapons shipped from like Turkey or Syria or whatever. What's your ethnicity? I'm like mostly French and German.
The convention is the International Committee of the Red Cross. The opinion of the Red Cross from 2006 to the present is that Israel remains the occupying power in Gaza. That's the opinion of the United Nations. It's the opinion of all human rights organizations.
I don't disagree with you about any of that, but let me ask you this. Norman, straight question. Hang on. Hang on. I actually don't disagree with your assessment, right? I do think Israel has exercised a control over the people of Gaza ever since they said they ceded control to a government. But let me ask you one question before you finish your answer, which is this. Hamas. There can be no doubt that Hamas was given billions of dollars, a lot of it encouraged by Netanyahu, given billions of dollars, which they did, in fact, squander, which they did...
Would you rather have a drink with Hemrich Heiler or Netanyahu for sure.
To the
Yeah.
detriment of their people, which they did.
Like the Kanye West Netanyahu. That was so. Remember when he did that? That was awesome, chat.
Tunnels, right, and which they did in the end when they invaded Israel, October the 7th. They knew absolutely what would happen, and therefore, in that moment, they sentenced to death tens of thousands of their own people. Would you quibble with that?
And don't forget, their leaders are billionaires. Their leaders are billionaires.
True.
I will actually, with all due respect, because I respect the facts, I'll quibble with everything you said. Number one, the money that went into Gaza, mostly from European countries and other international organizations, they monitored where the money went very carefully. They weren't about to endow Hamas. There's no evidence.
How does Hamas build all the tunnels?
It's
Well,
not
I'll tell
true.
you.
How do they function?
They don't have one.
I mean, Hamas. I don't know if Hamas ever used like the whatever European aid money to build tunnels, but Hamas did. I mean, Hamas paid millions of dollars to build those tunnels. Like, this is like people in Gaza work to build these tunnels for money paid to them by Hamas.
Penny of
Claire, I'll come to you.
accountability. Not one
I'll
penny of
come to you to
accountability.
respond.
Okay, allow me.
I will challenge both of you, but don't shout over each other.
No one penny of accountability. He's living in an alternate
The
universe.
European governments and many of the international economic organizations, the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, UNCTAD, UN Conference for Trade and Development, they all put out on probably a quarterly basis very precise reports on Gaza. None, and I've read all the reports over 10 or 20 years now.
I still started,
17 years.
David.
None of the reports have claimed that the catastrophe, the economic catastrophe in Gaza, has been caused by Hamas. None. Now, if you claim that you have more expertise in the subject than the IMF and the World Bank and UNCTAD,
I have more expertise than IMF and World Bank. Thank you
well,
very
can
much.
believe
Correct.
that. I personally don't believe that.
Saying Hamas is a tunneling corporation that pays people wages to create tunnels. I mean, that is one part of what Hamas do. It does. Yeah, Hamas does, in fact, pay people to build tunnels.
The claim of
A lot of unemployed people in Gaza. Like,
these international respected organizations is the main source, the root cause of the catastrophe in Gaza prior to October 7th. The root cause has been the medieval blockade that Israel imposed on it, and which Human Rights Watch, just in November 2024, a month ago, Human Rights Watch described as, quote, a crime against humanity.
Okay, but how did
that's the problem. The problem is,
how did
okay,
Hamas afford
I will give
to build all these tunnels?
Piers, I never quarrel with facts.
I mean, there is like the reason like people oppose like, you know, even giving Israel like defensive weapons or whatever is because there's a substitution effect. So like if we're giving Hamas money to like provide water to the people or whatever, like in theory there's a substitution effect to, you know, not have they don't have to provide that, which means they have more money to build tunnels and use weapons or whatever. That's the justification usually. I think it's usually pretty dumb, but
I'll give you an honest answer.
How does they afford?
He's going to tell you there's no tunnels in the Piers.
Well, I think the amount of tunnels has been vastly exaggerated, but I'll admit I can't prove that.
Right.
I've talked to civil engineers in Gaza about the possibility Israel claims 450 miles of tunnels. I find that totally incredible.
There are billions of dollars worth of tunnels. You accept that?
I don't know. I'm not a civil engineer.
He wants
I don't
to
know.
remain in
What I,
power.
Kill
what I
me.
do know, I'm perfectly willing to discuss. What I don't know, I'm not a civil engineer. I can't answer. What I can say is
well, you can't. We have no indication as to how many tunnels there are in Gaza just because you're not a civil engineer. Is that really qualification that you have to be able to comment on how many tunnels are located in Gaza?
let's get back to the question of what's happened in Gaza. You said Israel is in the war with Hamas.
Yes.
So has the other guest in this room. Yeah.
My name's
The guest-
Fleur.
What is your name?
Fleur.
Fleur. So has Fleur. Let me ask you a simple question, okay? If you're at war with Gaza, why are you shooting children in the skull and in the chest? The New York Times
Kill me.
published an article on that, came under a lot of flack.
I don't remember. I didn't look super far into it. I'm pretty sure I was told if you reversed image search one of them that it would come up with the it was from before the Israel shit, before the Gaza war broke out. It was found on a Reddit page in 2021. I don't know. I tried to reverse image search it and I could not find that, so I don't think that's true. But also I haven't. I'd have to read into the criticism more. New York Times, Gaza children. I don't know. I never heard a good response to why it just doesn't appear to be reasonable damage done to the skull or whatever from the type of gun that they're claiming that they used. But maybe there's a good response to that. I really don't know. Where shot. How many employees do the payroll with their HR like to Dubai week? Do you what's the point of all this? Are you like denying that Hamas pays people to build tunnels? Like, is it this? Yeah, this one.
Because they published that.
People claim that this picture was on Reddit in 2021, but I could not. I tried to do it myself and I could not see that, so I don't know. Probably not.
They said we can't refute the evidence. We have the X-rays in front of us. They're shooting children in the head, in the skull, and in the chest. If you're engaged in the war in Gaza, why are you killing journalists? Why are you killing medics? Why are you killing UN workers? If you're engaged in the war with Hamas,
I mean, there are like killing is different than targeting. So one, like you can lawfully kill journalists, that's collateral damage. Like two, there are like for example, there's one case of like of journalists being killed in Gaza. The reason why is because they started flying a drone, and they're in an active war zone where the airspace is being constantly monitored, and Israel saw that the drone was flying, and they were able to track down the location of the signal or whatever, and they just bombed the car that was flying the drone. It turned out to be an innocent drone that they were journalists, but like if you're in an active war zone, you'll assume that a drone flying that's not approved by you is like an enemy. is an enemy drone. Like, obviously, you would assume that's a threat to you. Like,
why is it that Human Rights Watch just this past week put out a report? They tell people where to flee. They say, go to the safe zones. Human Rights Watch says, when the people are directed, they're being shot at the road.
But are you seriously saying, hang on. When they get
to the safe areas,
I understand. I've already made that point.
Israel drops 2,000-pound bombs on
I've made that very point.
Does that sound like a war, or does that sound like a genocide?
It's interesting. Okay, let's get into that, because it's an interesting part of the debate. It's horrendous that UN workers, journalists, children, women have all been killed. It's horrendous.
Targeted.
Well, okay.
Targeted.
Now he's saying targeted, but like...
The word targeted. They say it's collateral damage as they've gone after terrorists.
When you shoot a child,
here's my question, Norman. Here's my question.
That's not collateral damage.
Norman, can you tell me any war where innocent people have not been killed in large numbers?
I'm not talking about innocent people. This is not...
He's talking about Hamas terrorists.
This is not collateral damage. This is not even indiscriminate killing. This is very discriminate killing.
He's saying it's not even indiscriminate, it's very discriminatory towards civilians. The relative risk is it's like 35 point something. Like it's not which is the relative risk usually is like a measure of it's a measure of how discriminate your army is being towards civilians versus towards militants. Usually if it's a genocide, the relative risk is under 4, which basically means that if you're a militant, you're only like 4 times as more likely to die than a civilian. In Gaza, it's like 35, meaning like if you're a militant, you're like 35 times more likely to die than a civilian. It's basically the per capita version of the civilian casualty ratio, because it's a better measure of how discriminate you're being. 35.6, although I don't know when these numbers were last updated, and also, who knows what the real numbers are. This number is the median of the Israel-friendly numbers and the Hamas-friendly number. So
it's indiscriminate bombing of the entire infrastructure.
If they wanted genocide, though, why
discriminately indiscriminate?
Just kill everyone in Gaza.
There's a very simple answer.
Let me answer.
I'm going to come to it.
There's a very simple answer to that question, Piers, because I know you're not allowed to say it, but since I know the topic very well, take the case of the Nazis. The Nazis needed the cover of a war in order to carry out the final solution. Now, Hitler had plans earlier on, but it required a certain amount of cover, propaganda, and all sorts of other devices in order to carry it out. Gaza is in the news. It's very hard.
Do you believe Israel had a right to defend itself after October the 7th?
Actually, if you want to hear my full answer, I'm not giving you a yes or no.
What's the short answer?
Kill me. How many times has Finkelstein been asked this? And I hope we get to the Warsaw Ghetto. I hope that gets brought up now.
That's correct. I don't have short answers. I've said it to you before. In my opinion, Israel. Here it's not my opinion, I'll quote Giora Eiland, the former head of Israel's National Security Council. Israel created, I'm quoting him now, in 2004, he said Gaza is, quote, a huge concentration camp. Israel created a huge concentration camp in Gaza. Israel imposed a medieval blockade on Gaza, which has been characterized as a crime against humanity. Israel periodically went into Gaza on its high-tech killing sprees, what it called operations.
Mowing the lawn, yep. Operations, created, okay.
I think I'm quoting
we didn't get the mowing the lawn quote that people like to bring up.
Economists call Gaza a toxic dump. Israel created a situation where you have children.
Yep.
I understand. How old are your children?
From 31 down to 12. 13.
Okay, fine. Imagine if your child, your father, your child was born into what Giora Eiland called a concentration camp. Your child was left to languish in that concentration
It sounds
camp.
like you're working up a justification. October
allow
7th.
me-
He's completely justified on October 7th. Maybe if you let him
True.
I can
Thank
explain where
you.
he's coming
Okay,
from.
allow me to finish.
I do need to bring Fleur in.
Oh, don't you know? Don't you know?
Yes, you do.
The explanation is not justification. Okay, clearly they have no agency, and this is just the inevitable result of these concentration camp positions. But clearly, Israel has 100% agency, and we never give them an excuse for like bombing Gaza after Gaza has launched rockets into their territory for 20 years.
I love
He does need to
lunatics-
respond.
I love lunatics.
If there was this is one-on-one interview.
Well, she probably thinks you're a lunatic too.
Okay, fine. And by October 7th, as you recall, Gaza had disappeared from the international stage.
Yeah.
All the talk was about the Abraham Accords, whether Saudi Arabia. So your child was destined to be born into, languish in, and die in a concentration camp. Israel created those conditions.
was it justified?
So
What
my view
happened?
is Israel forfeited its right of self-defense
Okay,
based
interesting.
on its criminal abuse of the population of Gaza. for
Why does he have
20
a
years.
crumpled up piece of paper in his hand?
So just to extrapolate that, it was just.
I'm very clear. There's no need for extrapolation. Israel forfeited
No,
its
I
right
was about
to
to ask,
self-defense.
does that mean then that what happened was justified?
I will stick by my formulation. Israel forfeited its right to
Kill
self-defense
me, bro.
by having
You won't
Hamas
answer.
justified by your logic.
Was Hamas justified? If your children were in that
If
situation,
you condemn Hamas, you must condemn Israel 100 times over.
I suspect, as a final resort, they might very well have done
Wow.
what happened.
So
You've
then,
got- okay.
by his logic, there's 100 children in tunnels and dungeons in Gaza right now, taken, innocent people, not soldiers, taken hostage. If it was your child, then it justifies everything by his very
Sure,
logic.
shooting children
By
in the
his
skull.
very
Yeah,
logic,
because there are 100
somebody takes
children-
away your children
Yeah,
let her
in the
respond
morning.
then.
We've heard
No,
enough.
let her
We've heard
respond.
enough
I gave you a
of
lot-
this,
gave you a long
Finkelstein.
time.
Okay. First of all, let's just come back from Gotham.
Well, hang on. Your response to what? Because Norman's gone as far as I've heard him do
No, but
in
what-
effectively saying
Finkelstein
it was a
has said
justified
that it
attack,
was a
and Israel
justified
has
attack.
no right to defend
self-defense.
itself.
So of course he's going to say that because he doesn't believe Israel has a right to exist.
Can you-
He
True.
doesn't believe Israel
Can you
has
show
a
me a
right to
document where I
exist.
said
Could you
that?
let me answer my
I've written
question?
10 books.
He
Show me
doesn't
where I
believe
said that.
that Israel has
Show me
the
where I
right
Has he
to
ever said
exist.
that?
If
Show me
Israel-
where I said
Has he ever said that?
My question is this.
Well, you just said he said that.
Yeah,
If
show me
Israel
where I
doesn't
said
have
Oh no,
the right-
I think he's too much of a coward to actually utter the words that Israel has no right to exist or whatever the fuck. But he blames Israel for literally everything. I'm pretty sure. I mean, he's very anti the Jews going there in the first place. Obviously, I don't think he believes the Jews had a right to go there in the first place to form their own country. Like obviously,
Show me
yeah.
where I said
Then
that.
it doesn't have the right to exist.
Fleur.
If
He's never
Israel
said that.
doesn't
Piers
have
Morgan just
the
asked you
right
a
to
question.
self-defense, it doesn't have a right to exist.
But you said-
He believes the whole of the country is a settlement.
Right.
He doesn't
Where did I
believe
say that?
anywhere. You've said it, you've implied
Okay,
it,
where
and we've
did I
had
say
enough.
that?
If you let me answer the question.
Fleur,
now.
yes, I agree.
Let
I'm
me
letting
answer
you
the
answer the
question.
question.
Holy
Where did I
shit,
say Israel had
dude.
no right to exist? Show me.
Can I
I've
answer the
written 10
question?
books.
I think you should
to this
answer him because you have said it as a fact.
If you believe that Israel doesn't have the right of self-defense, you are basically saying that Israel doesn't have the right to exist.
No, I never.
Yes, you do.
There's no connection
So then we can
between the two.
exist, but we can't defend ourselves
You can't
after
consi-
people attack
you
us.
can't
And let's just
consi-
go back in history.
You can't defend yourself against
Sorry.
concentration camp
He keeps
inmates.
interrupting me.
defend
He
yourself
just had a
against
10-minute
concentration
moment.
What is he? I mean, I guess I guess he'll do the cope like clearly Hamas's goal is just liberation of the Gaza Strip or whatever. I'm assuming he probably does that cope. But like, what does he think? What does he think the implication of you're not allowed to defend yourself against Hamas is? Does he think the implication is that? Like what you just you still get your country, you just can't do anything about the militants trying to destroy your country nonstop?
I agree.
He just had a
Let her
10-minute
respond.
monologue. Give me a 5-minute
Okay.
monologue, okay?
Okay.
Since the beginning of the establishment of the State of Israel, which he believes that we were the terrible people displacing people. Okay, we were also displaced. Jews were also displaced from Arab lands, and that's just what happened post-war, post-colonization of the world. So let's look. In 1947, there was a two-state solution proposed. The Jews said yes. The Arabs said no. It's not that they wanted a state. It's that they didn't want the Jews to have a state. So we declared a state in 1948. What happens? All the countries around us come to attack to create a genocide. It was a miracle that Israel wasn't eliminated in that moment. Move forward. 1967. Those territories in which we were attacked, there was no Palestine. There was no Palestinians. It was Jordan and Egypt and Syria and Lebanon that attacked Israel. If they would never have attacked Israel in 1967, that land would have remained Arab land. Okay, fast forward 1973. Another war that we didn't start. Now, do we not have the right to defend ourselves
started
from destruction?
67.
We didn't start 1967. We didn't start 73. We didn't start.
Kill
Then
me.
We go and we say, we crumble onto hope. We hold onto hope. We say, let's do the Oslo Accords. We offered Arafat. And Clinton will say this himself.
He has said-
Also, I like how he points out 67, but to be clear, Finkelstein thinks they started all of the wars. He doesn't accept that the Arabs started even like 73 or the War of Attrition. 60. What's that in 69? When was the War of Attrition? War of Attrition, not definition. Israel. Was it 69? Fighting between Israel 67 to 1970. Okay. I don't think he accepts any of this. Like,
They said they wanted 97% of.
or what's the wait, what war? I thought it was the war of attrition, but this is the. What's the war the female prime minister was in for between Israel and Egypt? What was that one? What the fuck was it? Was it not? Was it the war? Was it? I feel like it's the war of attrition. I might just be. On March 8th, 1969, Nasser proclaimed the official launch of the war of attrition. Okay, I am right. No, never mind.
The West Bank,
I remember.
half of Jerusalem, the lot. And they said no, and they started a bloody intifada in the streets of my city that killed many, many innocent civilians, Jewish and Arab alike. Then we thought, let's try something else. In 2005, let's do unilateral withdrawal. That's what Sharon did. He said, maybe if we actually just leave, they'll have an opportunity. There was never a blockade. The blockade started when Hamas went into power. And
I'm in there.
they were bringing in
Oh, okay. Clearly there's blockade, but
to attack Israel. That's when a country has to say, we need to defend ourselves. Now, if there's a blockade, don't they have a border with Egypt? Why don't you say, what about Egypt? There's no blockade when it's three wars. The fourth war. It's Egypt. What happened to Egypt? Didn't they have tunnels going in and out of Egypt? In fact, it was Egypt that had a much harsher border than Israel. We had 20,000 people coming into work.
Let me ask you a question.
So what concentration camp has, tell me something, what
True. It has the is it Gisha that has all the entrances and exits by Palestinians, like 40,000 a year or something? Like what concentration camp has fucking 40,000 people a year entering and leaving? Like, really?
Concentration camp has a country club. What concentration camp has a country club?
No,
Go after your island.
God concentration. Yes, your island thinks we should keep northern Gaza. That's what he thinks. So now you're quoting him?
Why your island called a huge concentration camp? Why? 2004.
I don't speak for him.
Hey, you could just Google it.
I don't know why Noel Vigil's in his place to quote game.
Yes.
We left in 2005.
Right. He called Gaza in 2004 a huge concentration camp.
Let me ask you, Fleur.
So we left in 2004.
You never left.
We left in 2005.
Your imagination, you left.
Keep
In your
distance, please.
imagination, you
So
left.
you understand
According to the International
that this
Committee of the
man-
Red Cross, you didn't
Yes,
leave.
okay, we know how neutral
According
they
to
are.
Human Rights Watch, you didn't leave.
We know how neutral they
According
are.
to Amnesty International,
We know how
I know.
neutral.
Everybody's an anti-Semite.
No, but a lot of people, no.
For real.
Let me ask you a question.
I want to just answer
Let me get to the time now.
just
No,
make-
I want to ask you a question, which is this. There can be no doubt that even if Israel says we unilaterally pulled out in 2005...
Hello, my dude. Just go true. What country does XYZ? I don't know, man. Maybe it's maybe give it some logical thought and try to go beyond what's being said. I think logical thought would imply that if a place has 40,000 people entering and exiting a year, it's a lot of which is just for work or just like 30,000 people in emergency or whatever. Or this is monthly. Sorry, the monthly. My bad. Not yearly. Monthly is like that. Doesn't seem very concentration camp. Like the fact that Gaza pre-October 7th seemed to have, basically, it depends on what data you use. I don't think we have very good data. Seem to have like semi-comparable living standards to like other Arab nations. Like doesn't seem very like concentration camp of it. Like
troops and so on to the border, whatever. There's no doubt that Israel continued to exercise a form of occupying control. And we saw that very clearly after October the 7th, when Israel was, at the flick of a switch, able to turn off the supplies of water, of electricity.
Why didn't they develop
food.
their own water
No, but here's my question for you, Fleur.
Why didn't they use
Here's my
the money
question
to
for you.
develop their own
Here's my
electricity?
question
I'm
for you.
pretty sure on the water thing, from what I remember, most of the water in the Gaza Strip comes from Gaza internally. I think it's like 90%.
Why?
I don't remember electricity shit. I don't remember, man.
Given that Israel had that power, you can dispute the word occupation, but they had a control over the people of Gaza, the Palestinians, which I don't think they should have had.
I don't think they...
What gives Israel the right to exercise that kind of power?
The fact that it's ruled by a jihadist organization that's fundamentally opposed to the existence of their country and constantly attacks Israel. So, like, you probably want to restrict their ability to build up their military capacity, because if you don't, you get things like October 7th.
Over the people of Gaza.
It wasn't over the people of Gaza. It
Well,
was a terrorist entity that has in its foundational charter the destruction of the
Okay,
whole
at
of
least
Israel.
you gave them control.
At least
No, we didn't give them
probably
control.
agree
We gave the Palestinian Authority control.
Are you saying all Gazans are Hamas?
No, we gave the Palestinian Authority control. And then the year later, they had elections pushed by the American government at the time. And then Hamas won that election and then took over in a brutal coup, which, by the way, do you know how many of the PA they
Your
killed?
defense is you're happy to see... defense is to happily say that a number seems too high. I guess it's good in your books. Just run with that. I mean, if we're defining constant... I don't think it's reasonable to say it's a concentration camp if we have a lot of good numbers coming from it. Like, yeah, it's at some point, you preclude it being a concentration camp if the numbers in it, like, let's say life expectancy was literally, let's say the Human Development Index of it was literally the highest in the world, and people were allowed to enter and exit whenever they want. At some point, when the numbers get good enough, yeah, that does kind of preclude the ability of it to be a concentration camp. Like obviously these numbers can give us like an indicator of like how concentration camp like Gaza is, and like what.
This is their own civil war going on.
Listen, I think
and that's also Israel's fault.
Hamas are
Everything is Israel's fault.
Fleur?
You are basically practicing the bigotry of low expectation for the Gazans. And
True.
He's saying that the Palestinian leadership has no responsibility. Zero responsibility.
Hamas is a brutal terrorist organization,
Yes,
okay?
it is.
So that explains why Israel prohibited chocolate from entering Gaza. That's why Israel prohibited...
Prior to 2010, they were like on the whitelist system, right? Like a big thing is like you don't know, like it's not like they want to like intentionally, or I'm sure some people did. A lot of them probably don't want to intentionally like punish their children at Gaza by not giving them chocolate. It's that they don't know. It's that they don't know, you know, if the suppliers are smuggling stuff in. Like that's why, cookies were banned. Prior to 2010, they were on like a whitelist system. So like everything not on the whitelist was banned. Like that's why like, you know, cookies were supposedly banned or whatever. Although like they still had internal production of cookies in Gaza. Like they were still making cookies in Gaza. It's just that they couldn't be imported from certain suppliers, or they didn't have like any verified supplier cookies or whatever. But after the Gaza flotilla incident, they did loosen up on the blockade.
So. I agree with that.
Gaza.
I agree with you.
That's
He's twisting the reality.
Actually, that is the reality.
It's not.
Israel was doing that.
It's not. They were restricting building materials that they knew they were using.
It wasn't all they were restricting. Let me ask you, listen, I want to bring things forward.
Piers, we finally agree on more than we disagree on.
Listen, you'd be surprised. Honestly, I have a lot of sympathy for the plight of the Palestinians, and I have sympathy for Israel for what happened.
The implication is not that the 900K is unaffected. Like it's that like if we're defining something as a concentration camp, the ability of to be clear, it's not just upper class people, but the ability of people to leave is like kind of a important thing. Like most of the Jews couldn't leave the concentration camps. In fact, I'm not aware of any concentration camp where you know, 10% of the population had or not 10%, like 1% of the population had the ability to leave whenever. Like, or I shouldn't say whenever, because I do think you need a permit. Like, yeah.
I have a lot of sympathy for the Palestinians because they've always had terrible leadership.
Fine. You know what I think? Palestinians should be entitled to the exact same human rights as you.
They should be entitled to their own self-determination.
Yeah,
but why didn't they do that? Why didn't they take one of the pieces?
I agree.
Why did they not self-determine?
I agree.
Do you know why?
I agree.
Prisons don't allow prisoners to leave until they're done with their sentence. What do you mean? Are they still inmates when they like not like what? I mean, like, you can get a permit to leave for like certain instances if you're a non-violent criminal or whatever. It's my understanding. But like, criminals aren't allowed to like just leave and like go work a job outside the prison usually. In fact, I'm not aware of any prison in America that does that regularly.
Never taken responsibility.
Yes, but
the whole world has taken full responsibility away from the leadership.
My view is a bigger view, which is that right behind all this is Iran.
Absolutely.
That Iran's tentacles have been fueling Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Houthis, and that is the core problem in the region.
In Norman Finkelstein world, Islamism is not a problem. Political Islam is not a problem.
Let Norman respond now.
In his world, that's not a problem.
It's a very simple answer. There are called 4 or 5 final.
Not aware of any prisons that allow prisoners to do work for the state is different than allowed to leave the prison and work for like a private. I understand, like in prisons we have prisoners doing prison firefighting or whatever. That's not at all what is happening in Gaza when people exit Gaza to go work their daily job in Israel and then come back at the end of the day or whatever. Like what?
Yeah.
Jerusalem, settlements, borders, refugees. Those are the main issues. Under international law, the settlements are illegal. Each and every one. I noticed yesterday when I was watching your latest program, you referred to the building of new settlements as being appalling. No.
Prisons aren't concentration camps. Like obviously prisoners aren't free. Prisons also aren't concentration camps. These are different things. I'm not disputing that people in Gaza lack freedom or lack a lot of freedoms. I'm not disputing that point. I just don't think it's fair to call it a concentration camp. Like
under international law, confirmed in the July decision of the International Court of Justice, all the settlements are illegal. Under the plans,
that's probably true.
Ehud Barak offered in the year 2000, and then later under Ehud Olmert, Israel wanted to keep 80% of the settlements in place. It wanted to keep all the settlement blocks in place.
I mean, like most of the settlements are like very close to the pre-67 borders. So like it makes more practical sense to just absorb them and do land swaps, even if they are illegal or whatever. It's just like pragmatically, it makes a lot more sense to just grant them to Israel or whatever.
The question of borders. Israel's position has been, excuse me, it will not return to the June 1967 border. That's in breach of international law. Israel says it will not.
I mean, when it says international law, usually people refer to as UN 242. UN 242 is probably not legally binding because it's a Chapter 7 resolution, or is it Chapter 6? It's either like Chapter 6 or Chapter 7, and only one of those is legally binding. It's the not legally binding one. 2, it very specifically says, it says territories occupied, not the territories occupied. They intentionally left out the word the, because they didn't want Israel to return to all. They didn't want Israel to cede all of the territories occupied after the 1967 war. That was an intentional decision by the drafters of UN Resolution 242. And then it also says Israel has to withdraw that there has to be a just and lasting peace between Israel and the Arab nations, and the Arab nations must recognize Israel. Syria's kind of a shit show. I'm not aware of any factions in Syria that recognize Israel, but maybe they do. But Syria is a shit show, and only seeming like it's only going to be turning into more of a shit show. So
Not leave East Jerusalem. East Jerusalem is occupied Palestinian territory. It belongs to the Palestinians.
I'm just taking your points. You have stated that because 40,000 people can move there, therefore cannot be something bad like it can still be bad and not be a concentration camp. Those don't preclude each other. But yeah, the ability of like 40,000 people to come and go a month in the way that they do in Gaza, I think does kind of preclude the ability of it being defined as a concentration camp. Yeah. But it's not just that number too. Like there are other, like the life expectancy or whatever pre-October 7th seem to be relatively aligned. The infant mortality seemed to be relatively aligned with relatively aligned with other Arab nations. Okay, so is it something bad in your opinion? Well, it's bad, but I think some of the things Israel, I think some of it is justified. But yeah, I mean, it's like some of it is bad. Sure, I don't have an issue with saying that. Like obviously, the conditions of people in Gaza, especially right now, are not good. But that doesn't change. That doesn't change that I do think Israel has the right to defend itself or whatever. Like
Palestinian people. Very simple.
I will say, like, some of the blockade is definitely overly strict in my opinion. Like, I do think a lot of the blockade shit is bad, but
Well, I hope everybody will listen.
Who are we occupying Jerusalem?
especially prior to the flotilla incident.
Jordanian before
Okay.
67.
I'm not interested
No,
in
you're
your
talking about
opinion.
law.
So you agree it's bad. You define it. Yeah, Palestinians lack the basic right to self-determination. they lack the, like, people in the West Bank lack the freedom to go to like shit that's their own territory without going through an Israeli checkpoint. That seems pretty fucked up. People in Gaza, post 2005, don't they don't really have to go through Israeli checkpoints until after October 7th. But like the unemployment rate was like pretty high because they don't get investment because they're ruled by Hamas. The Hamas does not have elections. Like
Yes,
It's wrong in law.
That's
But you
why-
cannot dispute
It
on that.
was
Hang on,
48.
they lack access to materials based on the fact that Israel restricts what they can import. Like
What
Okay.
about this?
There's never been Palestinian.
Do you dispute? Okay, on one
I
point,
dispute
Fleur,
everything.
we can argue about the
Yes.
hang on. We can argue about the history of the settlements. Okay, what I don't think anyone can argue, Israeli or Palestinian, since the start of this war on October the 7th, 8th,
so, how bad would you define it to be? Not concentration camp level bad.
is that the aggressive expansion of settlements on the West Bank by Israelis since the start of this war, in my estimation, has not just been outrageous. I think it actually constitutes an indisputable war crime. What are they doing?
Do you know? Have you ever read Oslo?
I'm very aware
Okay,
of it.
so let me
I've
tell
actually
you.
interviewed-
So let me tell you what Oslo.
Why are you assuming
was-
things?
I don't think Oslo addressed settlements really. Like that was a big issue with Oslo, right? Is that it didn't actually say anything super specific on settlements.
I'll
Like,
tell you, I'm asking you a question because when you talk about it, you don't understand what was actually.
I
I'm
think he
literally
understands.
sorry.
Now-
I think he understands.
is it a crime against humanity? I don't know. I don't know what you mean by that. I don't know if I would go. Some of it, like, I don't think Israeli policy is intentionally designed to be a crime against humanity for the Gaza Strip, for the most part, would be my
Actually,
position.
specifically-
But like, but certain parts of it, sure, I'm sure you could define it that way. Like,
I asked you about
I'm going to answer.
this is a
aggressive
new
expansion
Piers
of
video.
settlements
It's 3 days old at this point, but
since October the 7th. It is indefensible, it is illegal, and in my estimation, it is a war crime. Now, we
is
know
no-
that's happening
there's no
because we can
war
see
crime,
it. We can
there's
see
no
it. What we
occupation.
can't see in Gaza
It
is
is
it,
all-
because the
no,
Germans
there's
are
no.
allowing it.
We're doing the no occupation line. Listen, you can do the occupations can be lawfully created in self-defense. There's actually. Ooh, you know what? Maybe you should read this today too. Dude, this one guy joined my server and then he left. Where is it? I don't know. Oh, fuck. Where did I save it? This one guy joined my server, and I just like clicked on it. It clicked on his like thing to see, like, you know, who he was, if we had any mutual friends and mutual servers, and he had this. He has like a Substack where he's like, the questioning the Israeli occupation narrative. I like clearly, I think what's fucking happening is best described as an occupation in the West Bank, and post October 7th, best described as an occupation in Gaza as well. Or at least post their invasion, which was October 29th or whatever. But there are legal arguments challenging the characterization of Israel's occupying force. These arguments hinge on several points. One, the absence of a sovereign state before the 1967 Six-Day War. Neither the West Bank nor the Gaza Strip were recognized as sovereign territories. The West Bank has been annexed by Jordan. Was annexed by Jordan, a move not widely recognized internationally, and Gaza was administered by Egypt without claim to sovereignty. Thus, the argument goes, since there was no sovereign state from which the territories were occupied, the strict legal definition of occupation might not apply. To the San Remo Resolution, the 1920 San Remo Conference entrusted Britain with the mandate for Palestine, recognizing the historical connection of the Jewish people to the region and supporting the establishment of a Jewish national home. Some legal scholars argue this gives Israel a legal basis for its claims. Yeah, there's a whatever, I get the term for it. There's something called like the basic rule or whatever, which is like independent states are like are like guaranteed the borders from their like colonial mandate or whatever. And people argue that means like Israel's like the independent state and they're entitled to the territory from their British mandate, which included the West Bank and Gaza. I don't think it included Golan Heights though, but defensive war. The territories in question were acquired during a war, which many argue was defensive in nature for Israel. Given the 14 Geneva Conventions, provisions for focus on territories taking an aggressive stance, there's a contention that the West Bank and Gaza don't fall under this category. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty reasonable to say occupations can be lawfully created in self-defense. And in fact, I mean, international law states as much. Oslo Accords in 1990 saw Israel and the Palestinian Liberation Organization signing a series of agreements collectively known as Oslo Accords. These accords established a framework for Palestinian self-governance in certain territories and a path towards a final status agreement. Some argue this mutual recognition and ongoing negotiation process means that the territories are not occupied in the traditional sense of international law.
Yes, and the journalists were allowed in, and they got killed. You'd say Israel's killing journalists. So you can't win, can you?
What do you think of the aggressive expansion of settlements on the West Bank since the war started?
I reject the premise of that, and I'll tell you why.
You think it's fine?
Let me ask you a question.
Do you support the expansion? I've had Jewish guests who have condemned
there's no occupation.
There's no occupation.
She said there's no occupation.
Do you think these expansions are fine?
I want to answer the
Are
question.
they justified?
I want to answer the
Well, yes or
question.
no?
Oh my God, can you answer the question,
Yes or
bitch,
no?
please,
Yes,
bro,
yes.
please, bro, it should be so easy. Just say no. Just bite the bullet. Who cares? Just say no.
But no, because
You define this as a war, right? Yeah, probably. Yeah, why?
I'm asking you a simple question, Fleur. Has the expansion of settlements in the West Bank since the start of this war been justified, yes or no?
94%
yes or no?
of Palestinians
Yes or no?
are living under their own
Yes or no,
authority
Fleur?
in
Can you answer that?
Judea
Yes or
and
no?
Samaria.
Is it justified?
Oh, Judea and Samaria. Let's go.
justified?
Let's go.
Justified. We are building communities. There are communities.
Okay, there we go.
in
People out of their homes.
Finally.
Illegally.
Have you ever looked at areas?
International law says you're breaking the law.
There's no homes. There's desert. There's the Judean desert where there's
It's very
settlements.
interesting because, okay, let me come back to Norman.
What are you
Let me
talking
come back
about?
I mean, I think regardless of whether people have been kicked out of their homes, usually it's still illegal to do so.
Do you think people are getting kicked out of
You know what?
Important, a war, occupation, or genocide. I mean, you can have a war within occupied territories, but there's no right side of this
Here's my
shit.
thing for
Welcome
you,
the
You're
onion,
gonna
or
feel
welcome
like me
back.
saying this, because I've had guests from the Israeli side.
So
and when I've
real.
had that very point, that question, they have actually very quickly said, I think it's wrong, right? And I respect that completely. I've got to say, Fleur, your total refusal to accept anything in terms of the settlement since October 7th of the West Bank
Let
is
me
wrong.
ask you a question.
I just find it
Why
outrageous.
was there terrorism before 1967?
I'm not going back to
If all,
67.
no, I am.
I'm talking about the last year.
Because you're talking about territory that
These
was
settlement expansions in the
legitimately.
last
You're
15 months have
talking
been
about
totally wrong.
territory that was legitimately conquered after a war we didn't start
All right.
in '67.
All right.
So let me ask you a question. Do you think that when somebody aggressively starts a war, they should never pay a price for that?
No, but I think
Thank you, Experimental Punch 21 for the follow. I appreciate it. Welcome to the stream.
So what's the price they should
No,
pay?
that's the question I've been asking for the last year.
Jordan attacked
That's the question
Israel.
I've been...
Hunter, I have no issue with saying that like Israel has committed war crimes because like literally every country ever when they're at war has committed war crimes. Like the U.S. committed war crimes when it was in Iraq. It did the Abu Ghraib prison or whatever. Like we had the videos of the IDF raping Palestinians. It doesn't make it a genocide. That doesn't make the war unjustified. Like what? Sure, I think Israel's probably restricting aid too much when in October, whatever, before October 15th, they didn't let aid into the northern parts of the Gaza Strip or whatever. And like Anthony Blinken got mad at them and like they on October 16th had to start letting aid into the north again.
The territory Jordanian. And let me tell you something.
All right.
After the
I'm not claiming Israel is an angel here. That's not a position I am held to. Like,
keep them.
Fine, I'm going to Norman for a response. Here's the thing, Norman. We agree about more than you may realise, and I do with you as well in certain areas, and disagree in others, right? So I don't come at this from an ideological, I'm with one side or the other. But I do find anyone who attempts to defend the expansion of settlements in the way that we've seen, I just think that they're so far...
To what level, though? I don't think Israel, as a matter of policy, is intentionally committing war crimes. I think there are probably some commanders that intentionally commit war crimes. I think there are more individuals who also intentionally commit war crimes. I don't think it's a matter of policy. It's Israeli, dictated policy to, like, commit war crimes against Palestinians or whatever. That's my position.
You can't see the wood for the trees out there. My big issue with Gaza is not that your characterization is necessarily wrong. It's that we, as Western media, don't know because we're not allowed in there. And my big problem with the IDF, and I'll get a response from you, Fleur, on this, is the IDF's refusal to let independent Western journalists in to verify what they're doing and to report fairly and freely, I think is very telling and increasingly damning.
Okay, Piers. I
don't fully disagree with that point.
When you had Katie Halper on and Alan Dershowitz and John Cornelius and Matt Kennard. And that point you made yesterday, which you're reiterating today, I'd like to address it very directly. You say the problem is that Israel is, or a problem is that Israel isn't admitting journalists. And you correctly said it's fair for a fair-minded person to infer.
So you don't think there are any operations where Daddy was targeted? LOL, come on. That's not a position I'm held to. That literally there's not a single operation where they targeted civilians. I just don't think it's a matter of policy that's the case. I don't think when you say where Daddy was targeted, I don't know exactly what you mean by that. Like, are you talking about the whatever? What's the where is Daddy thing? The thing with the AI DSS system that people get asked mad about?
Half the picture. The other half of the picture, which I hope your listeners will pay attention to, the other half of the picture is this. Since Israel imposed the blockade on Gaza, it's
you know about any operations about Daddy being just because you kill people as collateral damage also doesn't mean you're targeting them. The where's Daddy thing, right, was like that they're blowing up Hamas people in their private homes, right, and you kill them with their entire family. It's not necessarily illegal. That's not necessarily, unless it's disproportionate. That's not necessarily illegal. Like
in the economic basket case, and all these international organizations have had to come in. Save the Children, World Food Program, CARE, UNESCO, UNICEF. They all have field operations there. They all know the lay of the land. They're all still there since October 7th. Now, when South Africa submitted its application to the International Court of Justice alleging that Israel was in breach of the Genocide Convention, who did it cite? It cited all of these organizations. It would be better if we had journalists there, but really at this point, journalistic coverage would be superfluous. We have all the respect.
Well, wait, if you intentionally do it when they're home, knowing that there would be collateral damage, no, you have, if you think that, you have no understanding of international law. It is 100% okay to knowingly kill civilians under international law.
Superfluous.
Okay, I will say superfluous, meaning we have all of these international respected organizations, many of them headed by Americans, like Agency for International Development. When they all charge Israel.
Bro, why is he still? What the fuck?
Choosing starvation.
Oh, is it like? Oh, it's because he's sick. He keeps coughing into it. Is that what it is?
Israel.
As in, you favor not doing it in other circumstances. What?
Using starvation as a weapon.
We have about 8 minutes left.
I just want to answer that. The Special Advisor for Prevention of Genocide yesterday for the UN was sacked. Why? Because she said that what's happening in Gaza did not meet the definition of genocide. This is the Special Advisor for Prevention of Genocide. What he is talking about is a blood libel that Jews have suffered for thousands of years.
That's a little harsh, but okay.
Blood libel that used to be, Jews are killing Christian children for making the bread, and all of that today, as the collective country, the Jewish country, now today we face the same blood libels, but in big. That's exactly what's happening.
We have a few minutes.
Genocide is a blood libel. Apartheid is a blood libel. Everything this man talks about is a blood libel.
I want to ask,
he's having his 5 minutes in this.
Listen, Finkelstein might be the person who his criticism is like most okay, but like it's so great. Every criticism of Israel is blood libel. You're now relying on the one point. They had no choice but to do it when they were home. That's not true. You could have a case where they are able to target them when they're not home either, but it doesn't necessarily make it illegal to also target them while they're home. In fact, it could be like it could be the case where 2 strikes would be legal and Israel chooses one because they think it actually has less collateral damage if they are home.
Because today it's trendy to hate Israel and hate Jews. But
it's not Jews, it's Israel. Jews are a nation. Jews are not a nation or a race. I mean, Jews are ethnicity. They are arguably a nation as well.
He's the new president of the United States. He's packed his cabinet with very pro-Israeli people. That's no great secret.
UNICEF is Hamas, real.
What does that mean, do you think, for this war? I mean, on one level, it may bring an end to the war faster, which would be a good thing for everybody. But what does it mean going forward? I mean, my big argument with Israel...
It's a religion. It's also an ethnicity, right? Like, what? Like, do you think Israel's an ethno-state? what ethnicity is Israel an ethno-state for? Like what? Like
coherent plan for life after the war. And I've been very cynical about Netanyahu, that he's facing corruption charges the moment this is over. He's also, there's a big report out today from Israel, holding his government to account for the failures of allowing October the 7th to happen.
What?
Accountability for that. There's no great incentive for him to end this, but Trump may want him to end it quickly, I suspect. But what happens then? I mean, just be
really? Does it? I mean, maybe, but also like, I don't know. All of Trump's rhetoric on it is just seems to be telling Israel to finish the job and to do it, get it done, get it over with. Like, I don't know. I don't know if he's going to be pushing for a ceasefire or anything like the Biden administration was. So,
what is going to happen?
I don't know.
Well,
it's no state or race, it's religion, but it's also like an ethnicity, right? Like we have evidence of the Jewish ethnicity, like as a matter of like DNA, and also like you would say that Israel's not an ethno-state then, right? Can you just answer, like, is Israel an ethno-state, the Onion?
I hate to be a bearer of bad news, and I've been criticized on that score by people who normally I would count as my allies. But as I said, I think Gaza is no more.
Just gone. What will happen to the people?
I think by hook or by crook, they're going to have to figure out a way to leave.
Well, they're going to neighboring Arab countries.
Oh, they won't accept
I don't know what's going to happen. But as you know, Piers, in the modern world, right now there are 2.5 million Syrians in Turkey. There are about 1.5 million Syrians in Lebanon. There are large population movements. I don't want to go into that area, first of all.
What makes you Jewish as a belief? Nope. You can be Jewish and not, and you can be a Jewish atheist. You can be a Jewish Christian, because Judaism is also an ethnicity as well as a religion, as well as arguably a nation as well. Jewish identity is a really hard thing to nail down, but it is like clearly an ethnicity as well.
It's a distraction from what we should be focusing on.
But also, can you answer, do you think Israel's an ethno-state?
And what we should be focusing on now is what happened, who is accountable for it, because that's one part of historical justice.
Before I go to Fleur for response, just very quickly, because we are literally in the last 5 minutes now, should Hamas have any form of power in any government after this war?
Piers, I've answered that question to you before, but I'll answer it again. I will be succinct.
Kill me, bro.
Hamas, by killing 1,200 people on October 7th, disqualified itself from participating in any future in the resolution of the conflict. And Israel, by a factor of
is disqualified 20 times over.
Itself. And we have to add, it's not
kill
just
me when intentions matter for the moral standing of the perpetrators.
It's the
when
Israel, which gets more and more enthusiastic.
No, there are many relations. Okay, I'm glad we agree. Israel's not an ethno-state. Glad we.
More and more each time a massacre unfolds in Gaza.
But we also saw hang on that. We also saw scenes of widespread jubilation when the hostages were dragged through the streets in Gaza from a lot of Palestinians. The idea that it's just Hamas members who have a view of an anti-Jewish sentiment. I saw it with their own eyes.
He is assigning a cult of death to the wrong side. He is assigning a cult of death to Israel. Israel is a cult of life.
Let me ask you a question. Let me ask you.
I have 4 children.
No way, Jewish is a race. I mean, it's like, I mean, Israel's a Jewish nation, right? Like the argument is Israel. Jewish is arguably like a nationality as well, but like if you Jewish identity is probably like the single hardest identity to nail down. But Judaism's a religion. It's also an ethnicity. We have evidence of the Jewish ethnicity. You're just wrong at that point. You can just look up DNA evidence. Although this is controlled by Jews, so you got to be careful. Jewish ethnicity. Ancient DNA provides new insight into Ashkenazi Jew. Genetic study of Jew. It's like we can just look at us, but you can take a DNA test and it can tell you you're Ashkenazi Jewish, or but there's again, it's literally the single hardest identity to nail down, because it's all of these things lumped together. American is Christian. Christian is a right. Yeah, but when people say Israel's a Jewish nation, they typically don't mean just because the majority of people there are Jewish. I wouldn't call America. When people say America's a Christian nation, usually it's right wing hacks doing so because they think it's founded on Judeo-Christian values or whatever the fuck.
Let me ask you.
I have 4 children, and they come home singing songs, "One day we'll have peace." And you know what they teach them in the Palestinians?
It encompasses elements in nationhood, ethnicity, religion, and culture.
Let me finish. The very rude. He's not let me answer any question. That's not true. You do not live in Israel. You have not been to Israel, and I don't know how long.
They sing death to the Arabs.
He's wrong.
Even in Amsterdam, they sing death to the Arabs. In fact, even in Amsterdam, they sang, you know why there are no schools in Gaza?
The abused wife is justifying
because there are no more children in Gaza.
The abused wife is justifying find the program.
I didn't look at any of the protests going on in Amsterdam or whatever, so he could be telling the truth there. I really don't know.
Amsterdam.
He's justifying the program. The abuse wife.
Yes.
Abuse wife syndrome. Justifying the program.
Israel has a cult.
Then that does not follow. Just because when people in America talk about us being a Christian nation, they mean it was founded on Judeo-Christian values. I don't see how it follows that Judaism is not a ethnicity. That does not follow at all. But okay.
For Jews.
That's not true. And the 20% of Arabs who live, and 20% of Arab citizens that live in peace in Israel, that prosper in Israel. That
are you Jewish if you don't believe in God? You can be, yeah.
Every single
Again, you can be a Jewish atheist.
You know who the best educated people in Israel are? Christian Arab women. And that's Israel. We celebrate diversity. Everybody gets opportunities, including our Muslim
nice to know.
population. He's living in a world that doesn't exist and is assigning everything that is wrong with Hamas to... Now, let me just finish with something. This is Israel-Hamas, who we killed, thankfully, a billionaire, the guy who obviously followed the accounting of Hamas, yes. The blood of women, children, and elderly, we're the ones that need this blood.
So damn, she's got the quotes. She's got the quotes. Then Finkelstein's going to say, well, this is what Israeli defense minister, the one guy that says insane shit all the time said, and...
live like a king in Doha. Now, I think what both of
the finance minister, what's his name?
Territorial conflict. This is an ideological conflict because Hamas don't want a two-state solution, and unfortunately, the PA have rejected every two-state solution proposed
So what happens at the end of this war? So what happens at the end of the war?
There is no territorial solution because this is not a territorial conflict.
Happen?
I pray that the Abraham Accords and that the wider peace in the region will bring the Palestinians to the point that they understand that the only way forward is to negotiate with Israel. Not to go this way or that way, and not to kill Israelis, but to negotiate with Israel. Israel is a country that I'm so proud of my country. 1948, nobody gave us anything. We've been fighting wars incessantly. We built a technological superpower. We are curing cancer. We are curing climate issues.
Bro, they cured COVID. You know the conspiracy theory. They were working on a COVID vaccine before COVID even released. Okay, before the COVID patch dropped. Okay. Because they actually engineered it as a bioweapon, as we all know.
But anybody else, including Arab,
you know what we need a cure for?
You know what we need a cure for?
We need a cure for a 75-year conflict.
We do.
And you know what? I'm reminded again of a conflict in Northern Ireland between implacable enemies who killed each other for many decades, and they eventually got leaders who were able to barrel through all that and reach peace.
That's what we need. I was deputy mayor of Jerusalem for 6 years. All I did was build bridges between the 40% Muslim population and the Jewish population, and they have prospered.
Fleur, I have to leave it there. Fleur and Norm, thank you. Listen, I appreciate you coming together. I know it's passionate views on both sides, but I do appreciate you agreeing to do this debate. I always learn things when smart people debate these things, all right?
Okay, just one last word, if you don't mind.
Very quickly.
Okay. I was supposed to debate Benny Morris at Oxford. He said he won't debate me.
What the fuck?
I was then supposed to debate Ehud
Based?
Oxford this week. That's why I came. He said he wouldn't debate me.
Based?
So I appreciate
did he really have a debate scheduled with Ehud Olmert? Really?
The fact that Fleur...
He was the prime minister, right? Yeah, former Prime Minister of Israel.
Hey, I don't think
that would have been awesome, bro. Why'd he refuse? What the fuck? Awesome. Fire. Sick. Cool.
Very well.
Well, that's
right.
But let me tell you,
no, I'm done. No.
Name the trait that makes you Jewish. Whatever. I mean, it depends, again, because Judaism is ethnicity and also arguably a nation and also a religion. So if you're talking about religiously Jewish, you would have to believe in a few things, like, there's a single God, Jesus was not resurrected. He was just a regular prophet or whatever, a few things like that. If you're talking about Jewish ethnicity, you'd have to have some DNA that makes you the Jewish ethnicity. If you're talking about part of the Jewish nation, that's a lot more complicated. You probably have to have some set of cultural ideals that align closely with the Jewish culture common in Israel. You'd have to have some shared history with all the people either in Israel or in the diaspora. Diaspora is how you pronounce it? Diaspora, whatever the fuck. That make you part of the Jewish nation. Yeah.
He refuses to debate Mossab Youssef Hassan.
You know what?
He refused to debate him tomorrow.
There was no Jewish nation. I mean, there was a while ago. there wasn't 3,000 years ago.
Why don't you invite Piers? Can I ask you to invite
Gaza flat, how the Palestinians rebuild without Israel allowing it? Well, that's the big issue, is that, I mean, I think that's probably actually the best justification for trying to get rid of Hamas entirely, or at least not having them being the ruling authority in the Gaza Strip, because Israel's not going to be willing to give Hamas materials to rebuild, because they've seen what Hamas does with materials, right? They dual use materials. They use them to build tunnels. So
we get people on and they do debate.
You probably need to get rid of Hamas as much as you possibly can to let them rebuild. Like,
I've got to leave it there, Fleur.
To debate him on your
All
show.
right.
He will refuse.
We will decide who we get on
I
our
know
show.
debates-
But I'm leaving it there, Norman.
Yeah, there you
Norman,
go.
I'm going to leave it.
Mossad.
Norman, if you want another
Now
plug
he's
for your
going to
book,
be a psychopath.
we've got to leave it there. I want to leave with a mention.
Debate Mossad. Debate Mossad.
Guys, continue it out the back.
Mossad.
All right, Norman Finkelstein, the author of Gaza's Gravediggers and Inquiry into Corruption in High Places. Thank you. Good to see you. Good to finally meet you. Fleur Hassan, great to see you in person. I enjoyed the debate very much. Thank you.
Brianna, it really matters to trans people. Why the fuck did he upload this as a... Does he not know YouTube Shorts can only be a minute long? He uploaded this as a YouTube short? Nice one, Piers.
Excited today to talk about how everyone here is wrong. David, I love your show. I consider you a friend.
So if we go back, then they are... So if we go back, then are they part of Egypt? If who goes back, what?
You and the Democrats are completely wrong about what trans people need. We don't need you advocating for, trans vaginoplasties in prison. We need to retreat back to the basics of what we need, which is HRT and healthcare. And the problem is the Democrats have been captured.
Well, the argument is that whatever vaginoplasty is healthcare, right?
So they've redefined what trans means to all this non-binary nonsense and all this stuff that has nothing to do with how we got our rights in the first place. Ben, you can appreciate this. I was the first trans person to ever transition at Ole Miss, our alma mater. That was very, very different. It was 20 years ago, toddy. And the thing is, the way I got equality and got people to respect me in Mississippi was not by screaming at them or lecturing them about my pronouns. It was getting them to see my humanity. This is something trans people have just completely lost. And the problem is the Democratic Party is unwilling to call out these bad actors. And because of this, we are having a conversation that does not serve trans people. Piers, I am begging you on this show, stop inviting these stupidest leftists on to make the argument for trans civil rights. Let some people
kill me, bro. Brian Tyler Cohen, the stupidest leftist.
You actually understand this stuff. And Dave is laughing because you understand integration as a gay man. You know exactly what I'm talking about. You've done the same playbook your whole career.
Well,
this works. This is
first
how you
off,
got
I'm only
gay.
I'm only gay starting at 10 p.m. What time is it? We'll have to check on that.
Wow.
But actually, you're completely right. Brianna, you're completely right.
I don't think Dave Rubin likes when people mention he's gay. I think he tries to hide it from there. don't think he enjoys that one. If you want to chat with me live, sub here or go to Nonfon420 on Twitch or Kick via the links below. Once again, please like and sub to help with the algorithm, and consider sending a donation through YouTube Super Thanks to directly support me, and I'll make sure to reply to any question you ask. See you guys next time.